Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
The surprise attack on Pearl Harbor brought the United States into World War II. But why did Japan take such a drastic step? The answer lies in a web of political tensions, economic struggles, and military ambitions. In the early 20th century, following their victory over the Russian Empire in the Russo-Japanese War, Japan emerged as a major military power with ambitions of becoming the dominant force in Asia. By the 1930s, Japan was expanding aggressively, invading Manchuria in 1931 and launching a full-scale invasion of China in 1937. These actions strained relations with Western powers, particularly the United States, which viewed Japan's expansion as a threat to stability in the Pacific. But expansion and war do not come cheap. Japan's economy was heavily dependent on imports, particularly oil, rubber, and steel. The US and other nations supplied much of these resources. However, Japan's militaristic expansion led the United States to impose economic sanctions. In 1940, the US banned the export of aviation fuel, and by 1941, it had frozen Japanese assets and cut off oil supplies entirely. This placed immense pressure on Japan, whose military and industry relied on foreign oil. Faced with dwindling resources to fuel the war machine, Japan's leaders believed they had two choices: abandon their expansionist ambitions or secure the resources they needed by force. They chose the latter, setting their sights on the oil-rich territories of Southeast Asia, like the Dutch East Indies. But there was a problem. The U.S. Pacific Fleet, based in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, which at the time was made up of just over 200 ships and 1,500 planes, including 3 aircraft carriers and 9 battleships, such as the Arizona, the Oklahoma, and the Tennessee. Pearl Harbor was a critical obstacle. Japan feared that the U.S. Navy would intervene in their plans to conquer Southeast Asia. Their strategy, with the British and other allies being forced to focus on Europe, a surprise attack to cripple the U.S. fleet would give Japan free rein in the Pacific, buying them time to consolidate their gains. The attack plan, masterminded by Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, was bold but risky. Yamamoto understood the industrial might of the United States and believed Japan needed a quick, decisive victory to force a negotiated peace. Over 350 Japanese aircraft were prepared to strike Pearl Harbor in a meticulously coordinated assault. In the early hours of December 7, 1941, Japan launched its attack. In just over 2 hours, they had sunk or heavily damaged 8 of the U.S.'s 9 battleships, destroyed nearly 200 aircraft, and killed over 2,400 Americans. However, the attack failed to destroy key targets like the U.S. aircraft carriers and fuel reserves, which would prove critical in the war to come. Due to these critical tactical failures, the attack had the opposite effect of what Japan intended. Instead of deterring the United States, it unified the American public opinion, which at the time had been largely against joining the war, and led to a declaration of war the very next day. Japan's gamble would ultimately draw them into a prolonged conflict they were ill-equipped to win. The attack on Pearl Harbor wasn't just a tactical decision, it was the culmination of years of escalating tensions and strategic miscalculations. Japan's decision to attack was certainly part of a far more complex series of events in Japan, going back to the early 1930s. However, the core factors have been laid out here. Today, December 7th remains a date shrouded in infamy, and it reminds us of the consequences of war and the importance of vigilance in a world of many competing interests. If you liked this video, feel free to drop a like, and in the comments let me know what you think. What if Japan had not attacked Pearl Harbor, or even delayed it? Would the US not have joined the war? Or would a delay of the attack have kept the US out of the war long enough for it to be too late for the Allies?